I pulled my car to a stop in front of the Monarch Grill at 6:45 p.m., 15 minutes early. I smoothed down the lapels of my best charcoal blazer, the one I'd saved for 3 months to buy. Even from the valet stand, the restaurant was an exercise in intimidation. Massive glass doors, polished brass, and an interior that glowed with the warm, expensive light of 1,000 crystal pendants. My stomach twisted itself into a familiar knot. This was the feeling I got before every Britton family gathering, a cold, prickling anxiety that settled just beneath my ribs. "Reservation for Britton," I told the hostess, forcing my voice to sound level and confident. She gave me a professional, plastic smile. "Of course, Miss Britton. Your family is already seated. Right this way." Already seated. The text invitation from Eleanor had clearly said 7 p.m. I checked it 3 times before leaving my apartment. They had changed the time, or set a different time for me. Again. The hostess led me through the hushed dining room. The clink of heavy silverware on porcelain and the murmur of Phoenix's elite were the only sounds. I felt their eyes on me as I passed, my blazer suddenly feeling cheap, my steps too quick. They were at the best table, of course, a large, round booth in a private alcove, directly under a massive, glittering chandelier. Victoria, my adoptive sister, sat with her back to me, her blonde hair a perfect, calculated wave. My adoptive parents, Marcus and Eleanor, were on either side of her, like royal attendants. My brother, Reese, was completely absorbed by his phone, his thumb moving in a lazy, rhythmic scroll. At the far end sat Matilda Holloway, my grandmother. Her silver hair was coiled in an elegant knot, and her sharp blue eyes missed nothing. She was the only one who looked up as I approached. Her gaze was assessing, sharp, and utterly unreadable. "Sorry I'm late," I said, my voice sounding too thin. I reached for the single empty chair, tucked awkwardly at the edge of the alcove. The invitation said 7. "If you're watching this video, tell me where you're from or what time it is for you." Victoria didn't even turn around. She lifted her champagne flute and took a delicate sip. "Oh, that," she said, her voice carrying with perfect, cutting clarity across the restaurant's ambient hush. "That chair's not for you, Jade." I froze, my hand hovering over the back of the chair. "What?" She finally turned, her smile wide and bright and vicious. "This table is for family, darling, not the adopted charity case." The words landed like a physical punch, knocking the air from my lungs. A ripple of muffled laughter went around the table. Marcus, my adoptive father, suddenly found the wine in his glass to be the most fascinating thing in the world. Eleanor, my adoptive mother, busied herself by adjusting her pearl necklace, her lips pursed, but silent. Reese kept scrolling, his shoulders hunched, pretending he hadn't heard a thing. Only Matilda's expression changed. Her eyes narrowed, just slightly. The polite mask didn't slip, but something cold and hard flickered beneath it. Heat flooded my face. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure they could see my blazer move. I couldn't seem to get enough air. Around us, neighboring tables went quiet. I saw eyes dart toward us, then quickly look away, diners suddenly fascinated by their own plates. "I don't understand," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You all invited me to celebrate Victoria's new boutique." Victoria twirled her fork, admiring her manicure. "Did we? It must have been a courtesy invite. You know, like when people say we must get coffee but have absolutely no intention of ever seeing you. It's just what one does." "Victoria, that's enough," Marcus murmured, not looking up from his wine. It was a token protest, and she knew it. "What?" "It's just a joke, Daddy," she cooed. I stood there, rooted to the spot, the heat in my face turning into a cold, trembling rage. For 22 years, I had endured this. The forgotten birthdays, the lost Christmas presents, the accidental exclusions from family vacations. But this was new. This was public. "I think I've made a mistake," I said, my voice shaking. I started to turn. "Oh, don't be so sensitive, Jade. Victoria sighed, rolling her eyes. "You're making a scene. Just sit down." The expectation of my compliance, the assumption that I would simply swallow this new, deeper humiliation, made me hesitate. A war raged inside me. Walk away, preserve what little dignity I had left, or stay and prove. Prove what? That I could take it? "There isn't a chair," I said, my voice flat. "Well, that is a problem," Victoria said, her eyes gleaming. "I guess you'll have to stand, or maybe the bar." "Stop this," Matilda said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the tension like a razor. She fixed her gaze on the hostess, who was hovering nervously nearby. "Get another chair and another place setting, immediately." The hostess practically ran. Victoria pouted, her little power play spoiled. I slid into the chair when it arrived, placed conspicuously outside the main circle of the booth. Reese glanced up, gave me the barest nod, and returned to his screen. I was in, but I was most definitely out. Dinner was a 3-act play of my own invisibility. I picked at a salad I didn't want and drank water, contributing nothing. The family talked around me, through me, and over me. "The lease on the Scottsdale property is finalized, Marcus," Eleanor announced, her diamonds flashing as she gestured. "The decorators can start on Monday. I'm thinking Italian marble. Very clean." "Good, good," Marcus grunted. "Reese, I told you to get off that damned phone." "Your mother is talking." "I'm listening," Reese mumbled, not looking up. "Italian marble. Sounds great, Mom." "And my boutique launch," Victoria chimed in. "It was an absolute smash. We completely sold out of the Belgian handbags. Completely. I'm already thinking of opening a second location in Sedona." "That's wonderful, darling," Marcus said, beaming at her. "Whatever you need. We'll make it happen." I sat in silence, nursing my water. My own design firm had just landed its first real contract, a small office redesign that I had fought for, tooth and nail. I had thought, foolishly, that maybe tonight I could mention it. The thought seemed absurd now. The meal dragged on. Expensive wine was poured. Elaborate architectural desserts were served. I ate nothing. I said nothing. I just sat there, a ghost at their feast. Finally, the check arrived. The waiter, who had expertly avoided my gaze all night, approached with the black leather folder. He paused, looked at Marcus, and then, clearly on prior instruction, placed the folder directly in front of me. "Whenever you're ready, ma'am," he said, and vanished. I opened it automatically, and then I froze. The total, printed in neat, unforgiving type, was $3,280. Victoria leaned forward, her eyes glittering with malicious glee. "You said your little design firm is doing so great, right, Jade? All those blueprints or whatever it is you do." I stared at the number. It was more than 3 months' rent for my apartment. "Consider this your contribution to the family," Victoria finished, smiling sweetly. "A little thank you for all the years we've taken care of you." 5 pairs of eyes were on me, waiting, testing. Even Reese was watching now, his phone finally forgotten. He looked uncomfortable, but he said nothing. Only Matilda's gaze held something different. It wasn't mockery, it was calculation. She was watching me, studying my reaction with a chilling, clinical intensity. My fingers trembled as I reached into my purse. I couldn't afford this. The card would probably be declined. The public humiliation would be complete. But I refused to give them the satisfaction. I would not break. Not here. I pulled out my credit card, the one I use for business expenses, and placed it in the folder. "Of course," I said, my voice miraculously steady. "Happy to celebrate your success, Victoria." I signed the slip when the waiter returned, my hand moving in a smooth, practiced motion. My stomach felt like it was full of wet concrete. "I need to use the restroom," I said, rising from my chair. I didn't wait for a reply. I just walked away. I gripped the cold marble counter of the restroom, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror looked pale, composed, but her eyes were too bright, burning with a feverish, unshed rage. My hands were shaking. I turned on the cold water and splashed it on my face, not caring about my makeup. 22 years. 22 years of trying to be good enough, quiet enough, grateful enough. 22 years of trying to earn my place in a family that saw me as nothing more than a prop. Tonight, they hadn't just moved the goalposts. They had burned the entire field. The heavy door of the restroom opened, and Matilda Holloway entered. Her reflection appeared next to mine. She was perfectly composed, her expensive perfume cutting through the air. "My dear," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "I saw what happened out there." I straightened up, immediately building the walls I had learned to live behind. I didn't want her pity. Matilda had always been an enigma. Marcus's mother, the wealthy and ruthless founder of Holloway Bioscience. She was an observer, never a participant in the family's petty cruelties. We had exchanged polite pleasantries at holidays, and nothing more. "It's fine," I said automatically. "I'm used to it." Matilda's sharp blue eyes, so unnervingly similar to my own, held my gaze in the mirror. "No one," she said, her voice dropping, "should be used to what I witnessed tonight. That was not a joke. That was a public execution." She reached into her sleek black handbag and pulled out a heavy cardstock business card. She placed it on the marble counter between us. "Come see me tomorrow," she said. "My office, 10 a.m. sharp." I stared at the embossed silver lettering. Matilda Holloway, CEO, Holloway Bioscience. My fingers hesitated before I reached for it. "Why?" I asked, my suspicion warring with a sudden desperate flicker of hope. "Why would you help me?" "Because what they did to you tonight. It was despicable," she said. She paused, then added, "And because, frankly, they're starting to try the same thing with me. It's time someone fought back." She turned to leave. "Don't be late, Jade," she said, her hand on the door, "and don't mention this to anyone. Especially not Marcus or Eleanor." The door clicked shut, leaving me alone with the card and the thundering of my own heart. At 9:45 the next morning, I was standing in the lobby of the Holloway Bioscience Tower. The building was a monument of glass and steel that pierced the Phoenix skyline, reflecting the harsh morning sun. My throat was tight. The $3,480 charge was sitting on my credit card, a pending disaster I had no idea how to fix. "Miss Britton, Mrs. Holloway is expecting you," her executive assistant greeted me, her professional warmth a stark contrast to the cold lobby. I was led through silent mahogany doors and into a corner office that seemed to hang in the sky. The walls were glass, offering a 180-degree view of the city. Matilda Holloway stood at the window, silhouetted against the light. She turned as I entered, and those penetrating blue eyes assessed me. "Jade, thank you for coming. Please sit." I took the leather chair in front of her massive, empty desk. I sat on the edge, my back straight, hands folded in my lap. Years of navigating the Britton family had taught me to armor myself. "You said 10 grau," I said. "I did," she replied, a tiny smile playing on her lips. "Punctuality, a good trait. Your biological parents shared it, especially your father." The words sliced through my composure. My biological parents? I'd been told they were college students, that they couldn't handle a child, that I was, in essence, an abandonment. "That," Matilda said, her voice hardening, "was the first lie." She slid a framed photograph across the polished desk. 2 smiling faces looked up at me, a man with kind eyes and a dark beard, and a woman with my exact jawline, her hair a wild curly mess. They were wearing matching blue polo shirts with a small logo I didn't recognize. "Daniel and Serena Calloway," Matilda said. "Brilliant, brilliant engineers. And 2 of my dearest friends." You knew them?" My voice was a croak. "I recruited them myself, right out of Stanford," Matilda said, her fingers tracing the edge of the frame. They came to work for me at Holloway Bioscience. They were the lead research team on our most revolutionary imaging technology. They were family, more so than... She waved a hand, dismissing the thought. What happened to them? I whispered. A car crash, she said, her voice even, but her eyes darkened. Black ice on a mountain road, heading to a conference. You were 6 years old. She paused, letting the weight of it settle on me. They had just finalized your trust fund the month before. I stared at her. Trust fund? Matilda opened a drawer and pulled out a thick, bound folder. She placed it on the desk between us. $680,000. The room tilted. I gripped the arms of the chair to steady myself. $680,000. Every penny they had saved, Matilda said, her voice a low, controlled fury, plus their life insurance payout, all placed in a trust, designated specifically and legally for your care, your well-being, and your education. I was the executor. She opened the folder. Inside were copies of bank statements, financial transfers, property deeds. I don't understand, I said, my mind refusing to process the numbers. I had nothing. I went to community college on student loans. Marcus always said it was an impractical dream for you to go to art school. Matilda finished for me, her voice dripping with acid. He always said they were tight on funds when you needed braces, while Victoria was at a private equestrian school. Her finger tapped the first page. Here's the trust document signed by Daniel and Serena. And here, her finger moved, is the transfer of the full amount to Marcus Britton as your legal guardian, 1 week after the adoption was finalized. She turned the page. And here is a withdrawal for $150,000 2 months later. The same day, property records show Marcus and Eleanor closed on their first vacation home, the one you were never invited to. She kept turning pages. Another withdrawal. This one paid for Victoria's private high school tuition, in full, for all 4 years. Another. This one matches to the dollar, the down payment on the Aspen condo. Page after page, my life was laid out in a series of brutal financial betrayals. They hadn't just neglected me. They hadn't just been cruel. They had stolen from me. They had stolen my parents' legacy. They used me, I whispered, the realization sucking the air from my chest. All these years, I was their bank account. You were their 6-year-old lottery ticket, Matilda corrected, her voice cold as steel. They emptied it in less than 12 months, and for 22 years, they have treated you like garbage to justify the crime. After all, if you were worthless, who would care what they stole from you? I couldn't speak. I just stared at the smiling faces in the photograph. My parents, Daniel and Serena. They had loved me. They had provided for me. And the people who were supposed to protect me had robbed their orphaned daughter. Why? I finally choked out. Why are you telling me this now? You've known. All these years, you knew. You let this happen. The accusation hung in the air. Matilda didn't flinch. Yes, I did, she said, her voice quiet. And it is the single greatest regret of my life. I made a terrible mistake, Jade. I trusted my son. I believed he would raise you as his own, as he promised. By the time I realized what was happening, the money was gone and you were a teenager. What good would it have done to tell you then, to burden you with a truth that you had no power to fight? She stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city she had built. I was a fool. I thought I could protect my company even if I had failed to protect you. I kept him close, made him kuo, where I could watch him. She turned back to me, her eyes blazing. But now, my loving son is trying to steal my company too. What do you mean? He's been working the board behind my back, Matilda said, spreading rumors that I'm losing my mind, that I'm making erratic decisions, that I have dementia and need to be removed for my own good. He's patient, he's methodical, and he's desperate. Desperate? Failed investments, she snapped. Victoria's boutique is hemorrhaging money. Reese's little tech startup was a complete bust. They're out of cash, and they've already tried to forge my signature on company documents. They see Holloway Bioscience as their last big score. The dinner, the humiliation, it all clicked into place. Last night, I said, that was a performance for you. Exactly, Matilda confirmed. They needed to provoke me, to get a confused or erratic reaction they could report to the board. Your public humiliation was just a bonus for them, a way to show how in control they are, in contrast to my decline. She walked back to the desk and leaned on it, her palms flat. They stole your past. Now they're trying to steal my future. I propose we take everything back. My head was spinning. How? They're rich. They're powerful. I'm a designer with $3,280 in credit card debt I can't pay. You are the daughter of Daniel and Serena Calloway, Matilda said, her voice a command, and you have me. I have resources, Jade. Resources Marcus has never been able to touch. She pressed a button on her intercom. Delia, Theodore, please come in. The doors opened and two people entered. A woman in a razor-sharp suit with an aura of pure confidence, and a man who looked like he could find a missing penny in a hurricane. Jade Britton, this is Delia Walsh, my personal attorney, and this is Theodore Ramsey, the best forensic accountant in the state. Delia nodded at me, her eyes sharp. Mrs. Holloway has briefed me. What they did to you is not just immoral, it's criminal. Breach of fiduciary duty, embezzlement, fraud. They'll have a hard time defending this. If we can prove it, Theodore added, his voice precise. These documents are a fantastic start, but they're copies. We'll need originals, certified bank records, a clear chain of evidence. Which brings us to your part, Jade, Matilda said, fixing me with that intense gaze. Are you in? Are you ready to fight these people? I looked down at the picture of my parents. I thought of the $3,380 bill. I thought of 22 years of being invisible. Yes, I said, my voice shaking, but not with fear, with rage. What do I have to do? They kept copies of everything, I said, my mind racing. My biological parents. They were engineers, meticulous. I remember a key. After the accident, when I was moved into the Britton house, I had a small box of my things. There was a key on a plain ring. Marcus told me it was for a storage locker of old junk and that he'd take care of it. But he never did. I kept the key. Matilda's eyes lit up. Where is it? Taped under my old desk, I said. In the back of my closet. Go, Matilda ordered. Now, take Theodore with you. Delia and I will start pulling the corporate strings from here. Do not speak to anyone. 2 hours later, Theodore and I were standing in front of a roll-up metal door in a dusty, sun-baked storage facility in the oldest part of Phoenix. The lock was old but sturdy. I slid the key in. It turned. The door screeched open, revealing a wall of cardboard boxes, all labeled in my mother's neat, precise handwriting. Calloway, tax records 98. Calloway, research notes. Calloway, personal. My God, I whispered. We spent the next 3 hours in the stifling heat, prying open dusty boxes. It was a time capsule of my parents' lives. Old textbooks, research binders, photographs. Then, at the bottom of a box labeled household documents, I found it. A thick manila envelope. On the front, in my father's blocky print, it said, Jade's Future Trust Originals. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely open the clasp. Inside, pristine, was the original notary-stamped, wet ink-signed trust document. Attached to it were letters, dozens of them. Emails and letters between my parents and Matilda, discussing the trust, discussing their hopes for me, discussing her role as executor. Theodore, I said, my voice thick. Look at this. He took the documents, his eyes scanning them rapidly. This is it, Jade, he said. a rare note of excitement in his voice. "This is the smoking gun. Clear intent. Original signatures. Notarized. This is irrefutable." I pulled out my phone and started taking pictures of every single page. "Matilda needs to see this. Delia needs to see this." "We'll take the originals straight to her," Theodore said, carefully placing the documents into his briefcase. This changes everything. This makes the case 10 times stronger." I felt a surge of pure, unadulterated triumph. I had it. I had the proof. The unshakable, undeniable proof. I got back to my apartment building just after 8 p.m., emotionally and physically exhausted, but vibrating with a new, wild energy. Theodore had taken the originals straight to a secure vault that Matilda owned. I had the photos on my phone, backed up to a new encrypted cloud account. I unlocked my apartment door and pushed it open. And I froze. Something was wrong. The air was still. But my mail, which I always dropped on the small console table by the door, was scattered on the floor. I stepped inside, my heart suddenly pounding. "Hello?" Silence. I walked slowly into my small living room. At first, everything looked normal. Then my designer's eye, the one that notices every detail, started picking up the discrepancies. The cushions on my sofa were slightly askew. A stack of design magazines on the coffee table had been squared up. I always left them fanned out. I moved to my desk. The papers on it, which I'd left in a chaotic pile, were now in 3 neat stacks. My laptop was closed. I always left it open. I crept to my bedroom. The door was ajar. I pushed it open. My closet door was open. My clothes looked untouched, but the small shoebox where I kept my old passports and important papers was on the floor, its lid beside it. They had been here. They had been looking for something. I backed out slowly, pulling my phone from my pocket. I dialed Matilda's private number. "Jade, what is it?" "They were in my apartment," I said, my voice a low, shaking whisper. Someone broke in. They searched my place. They were looking for the documents." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. "Are you safe? Are you still there?" "I'm standing in the hallway. They're gone. They were sloppy, but they were thorough. Nothing's taken, just moved. They know I'm digging." "They don't just know." Matilda's voice was grim. "They're terrified. And they don't know that Theodore has the originals. They must think you do." "What do I do?" "You're not staying there tonight. I'm sending a car. It will be there in 10 minutes. Pack a bag, just the essentials." "You'll stay with me." This just accelerated everything. I hung up, a new cold dread mixing with my anger. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a war. "Wait," I said into the phone, my mind racing. "The other boxes. The rest of my parents' things. The photos, the research. It's all still at the storage unit. They'll go there next. They must know about it." "The car is on its way, Jade," Matilda said. "It's too dangerous." "I don't care," I snapped. "They've taken enough from me. They're not getting the rest." I hung up before she could argue and sprinted to my car. I sped through the city, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The storage facility was on the other side of town, a 30-minute drive I tried to make in 15. I was 2 blocks away when I saw the smoke. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I slammed on the brakes at the facility's gate. 2 fire trucks were parked, their lights flashing, cutting red and blue gashes into the night. A thick plume of black smoke poured from the row of units where mine was located. I jumped out of the car and ran, pushing past a firefighter who was unfurling a hose. "My unit! That's my unit! C12! "Ma'am, you have to stay back," he yelled, grabbing my arm. "My parents' things," I screamed, trying to pull away. "Everything is in there." A sheet of flame suddenly erupted from the roof of my unit, a terrifying whoosh that sent sparks high into the air. The metal door was blackened and warped. "It's too late, ma'am," the firefighter said, his voice grim, pulling me back behind the engine. "Looks like it started right in your unit. We're just trying to contain it now." I watched, numb, as they drenched the building in water. My legs gave out and I sank to the pavement. Gone. All of it. The photos, the research notes, the last physical pieces of Daniel and Serena Calloway. All turned to ash and smoke. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking. Matilda. Jade. Where are you? The car is at your apartment. They did it, I choked out. The storage unit, it's on fire, it's all gone, everything. They burned it, they burned everything. There was a long, cold silence on the other end of the line. When Matilda finally spoke, her voice was no longer a grandmother's. It was the voice of a CEO about to order a hostile takeover. Good, she said. Good? I shrieked. What do you mean, good? It's all destroyed. They just confirmed our case, Jade, she said, her voice like a shard of ice. They're terrified. They've destroyed the evidence, which is a felony. They've escalated this from a civil suit to a criminal conspiracy. They just handed us the weapon. Now we pivot. The next morning, I sat in Matilda's secure war room, a library in her penthouse that had been converted with secure phones and whiteboard walls. I hadn't slept. I was still wearing the same clothes from yesterday, and I probably smelled like smoke. Delia Walsh paced in front of the window. Theodore Ramsey was already hooked into a secure terminal, his fingers flying. This is bad, Jade, Delia said, not sugarcoating it. The photos you have are good, but they're not the originals. A good defense attorney and Marcus will hire the best. We'll tear them apart. Photoshop. Fabrication. Fruit of a poison tree. We can't build the entire case on them anymore. So what do we do? I asked, my voice flat. We go harder, Theodore said, not looking up from his screen. They destroyed the paper, so I'll go after the digital trail, certified bank records, wire transfers, server logs. It's harder, it's slower, but it's unburnable. And that's just the trust, Matilda said, walking into the room with a tray of coffee. That's your fight. Our fight is bigger. They've proven they'll commit arson and breaking and entering. They are desperate. We need to dismantle Marcus's entire corporate structure. She handed me a cup. Delia, you will file for certified copies of every bank record associated with Marcus, Eleanor, and that trust account from 22 years ago. It will take time. They'll fight it, but you'll win. Delia nodded, already on it. Theodore, Matilda continued, you will perform the deepest forensic audit this company has ever seen. I want every invoice Marcus has ever approved, every vendor he's ever hired, every expense report. I want to know where every single paperclip has gone for 20 years. It'll be a mountain of data, Theodore said. Then I suggest you start climbing, Matilda replied. She turned to me. And you, Jade. What do I do? I asked. My apartment isn't safe. My business, I don't even know if I have one anymore. Your business is irrelevant right now, Matilda said, not unkindly. You're moving into the guest wing. Your new job is here, with me. You are going to learn my business. You're going to learn where Marcus has buried all the corporate bodies, because you're going to be the one to help me dig them up. She pointed to a stack of thick binders on the table. Those are the corporate bylaws, board minutes, and quarterly reports for the last 5 years. You're smart. Your parents were brilliant. Start reading. I expect a summary by morning. The next 2 weeks were a blur. I lived in Matilda's penthouse, working 18-hour days in the war room. I fell asleep reading SEC filings and woke up to Theodore handing me spreadsheets. The grief for my parents' lost things was still there, a cold stone in my stomach, but I channeled it. I turned it into fuel. I found something, I said late one night. My eyes were burning from staring at the screen. Theodore, who seemed to subsist on coffee and data, wheeled his chair over. What? Victoria's Boutique, I said. Marcus approved a corporate marketing budget of $750,000 for a brand activation at a Phoenix Lifestyle Expo. I looked it up. The expo doesn't exist. Theodore's fingers flew across his own keyboard. The LLC that received the payment, Vic's Marketing Solutions. It was registered 6 months ago. The address is a P.O. box, And the signatory, "Let me guess," I said. "Victoria Britton." "Worse," Theodore said, a grim smile on his face. "It's Eleanor. She's not even trying to hide it. They're using company funds as a private slush fund to prop up Victoria's failing business." "It's a pattern," I said, pulling up another file. "Look at this. The new supplier for all our lab equipment, Apex Medical. Their prices are 30% higher than our previous vendor, hired 3 years ago on Marcus's sole recommendation. And Apex Medical," Theodore typed, "is owned by, wait for it, Marcus's old college roommate. He's not just arrogant, he's lazy. He's been bleeding this company dry for years, and he's not even creative about it." "Keep digging," Matilda said from the doorway. She was watching us, her arms crossed. "This is good. This is leverage against the board. But we need more. We need something they can't spin as a business oversight. We need the kill shot." "We're trying, Matilda," Theodore said. But he was smart about one thing. The servers from his COO's office from 2015 to 2020, they've been wiped, professionally. All the local backups are gone. That's where the really bad stuff must be. I looked at the whiteboard, at our growing web of shell companies and bad deals. It was a lot. But Matilda was right. It wasn't enough. We were missing the key. My phone vibrated. It was a new secure burner phone Matilda had given me. I looked at the screen. An unknown number, a single text message. "Parking garage, G, level 4. Midnight. Come alone or don't. Your call." I showed it to Matilda. Her eyes narrowed. "It's a trap." "I don't think so," I said. "Garage G. That's the one by Reese's old startup office. The one that failed. I think it's him." "If it's Reese, it's still a trap," she said. "He's weak. He does whatever Marcus tells him." "He's weak, yes," I agreed. "Which means he's also terrified. And terrified people do stupid things. Or desperate things. I'm going." "You are not going alone," Matilda stated. "I have to," I said. "The text says, 'Come alone.' If he sees anyone else, he'll bolt. He's a coward, not a killer. Let me go. I can handle Reese." At 11:55 p.m., I was in the concrete echo chamber of parking garage G. The air was cold and smelled of gasoline. My footsteps were too loud. I stood by a concrete pillar on level 4, my heart hammering. This was stupid. A car door creaked open in the darkness. Reese stepped out from behind a massive SUV. He looked terrible. He hadn't shaved in days, and his eyes were wide and darting. "You came," he whispered. "I'm here, Reese. What is this?" "You have to stop," he said, his voice shaking. "You and her. You're going to ruin everything." "Reese, he ruined everything. He stole from me. He's trying to steal from her. He's stealing from the company. He's the one who—" "Shut up," he hissed, looking around wildly. "I don't care about that. You don't get it. He's gone insane. He's obsessed with this. He's going to drag all of us down with him. Victoria, Mom, me. So help me stop him," I said, taking a step toward him. "No." He flinched, backing away. "I can't. You don't know what he's like." He shoved his hand in his pocket and pulled out a small silver USB drive. He threw it on the ground between us. "What is this?" I asked. "I don't know." He lied badly. "It was on his desk. He's always recording things. Always. Practicing." He looked at me, his gaze a toxic mix of fear and, for the first time, jealousy. "You think you're so much better than us, don't you? Coming in here, playing the long-lost princess with Matilda. You're going to burn too, Jade. He'll make sure of it." "Reese, just take it," he whisper-shouted. "I don't care what you do. Just leave me out of it. I was never here." He scrambled back into his car, started the engine with a roar, and sped out of the garage, his tires squealing. I waited until the sound was gone, then bent down and picked up the USB drive. It was cold to the touch. I closed my fist around it. This was it. This had to be the kill shot. The next day, The first bomb dropped. Matilda's assistant ran into the war room, her face pale. "It's on the front page of the Phoenix Business Journal." She threw the paper on the table. The headline was massive. "Crisis at Holloway. Founder Matilda Holloway's erratic behavior sparks board concerns." The article was a masterpiece of character assassination. Anonymous sources and concerned executives detailed Matilda's lapses in judgment and troubling memory gaps. And then the direct quote from her loving, concerned son, Marcus Britton. "This is a difficult family matter," he was quoted as saying. "We are only acting out of love for my mother and a desire to protect the company she built. Her health and legacy are our only priority." "He's gone public," I breathed. Before I could even process it, my phone buzzed. A link from a friend. It was Victoria's Instagram. She had posted a video. She was in her bedroom, makeup perfect, but with tears streaming down her face. I just have to talk about this," she sobbed into the camera. "My grandmother, my Nani. She's not well, and it's breaking our hearts. And there's this person," her voice dripped with venom, "who is taking advantage of her confusion, an outsider. Someone who is preying on our family in our darkest moment." The comments were a flood of sympathy. "Stay strong, V. So brave to talk about this. That's horrible. Who is this person?" "They're painting me as a gold digger," I said, my stomach churning. "And me as a senile old fool," Matilda said, her voice dangerously quiet. "It's a classic pincer movement. Discredit the witness, discredit the victim. He's smart." The third hit came an hour later. A sleazy online gossip blog, the kind that always got anonymous tips. Exclusive. The adopted grifter, trying to steal the Holloway fortune. Sources say Jade Britton, a struggling designer, has latched onto elderly billionaire Matilda Holloway, fabricating stories of a stolen inheritance to get her hands on the company. "She was always jealous," says a family insider. "Now she's seeing her chance to get what she never earned." They were attacking me. They were attacking Matilda. They were controlling the narrative, and they were doing it fast. The smear campaign was brutal and effective. The phone calls started the next afternoon. "Jade, it's Mark from the RLT group," my biggest client said, his voice full of corporate regret. "Listen, we're so happy with the designs, but this public situation with your family, my board is uncomfortable. We're going to have to pause the contract for now." "Pause? Mark, the crews are starting on Monday. I've already paid for the materials." "I'm sorry, Jade. My hands are tied. We can't be associated with this kind of controversy." He hung up. 3 more calls followed. My dentist's office redesign, canceled. A small law firm lobby, postponed indefinitely. The residential project I'd been chasing for months. They went with another designer. By 5 o'clock, my business, the one I had built from nothing, the one I had paid for with student loans and sleepless nights, was gone. It had evaporated in less than a day. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window in Matilda's penthouse, watching the city lights blur as tears of pure, hot rage finally came. I had lost everything. Again. "They won," I whispered, my hands clenched. "I have nothing left. I'm losing everything I've built. For what? Justice? They'll never pay." The doors to the library slid open. Matilda joined me at the window, her reflection appearing beside mine in the dark glass. "They haven't won," she said, her voice firm. "They've just raised the stakes. You've spent your life surviving their cruelty, Jade. Now you're going to fight, and I will fight beside you." "Fight with what?" I snapped, turning on her. "My business is dead. They're telling the world I'm a grifter and you're insane. We have nothing." "We have the truth," she said. "And we have what they're most afraid of." She pointed to the desk. Theodore was sitting there, a grim smile on his face, and next to him sat a nervous-looking man in a rumpled suit. "Jade, this is Arthur Trent," Theodore said, "our whistleblower." I wiped my face and walked over. Arthur Trent looked to be in his late 60s, with kind eyes behind thick glasses. He clutched a briefcase in his lap like a life raft. "Mr. Trent," I said, shaking his hand. "Miss Britton," he said, his voice reedy but firm. "I've been waiting for this call for 5 years." Arthur was the head of accounting for 20 years, Theodore explained. Marcus forced him into early retirement 5 years ago, just before he had the servers wiped. "He thought I was just an old fool," Arthur said, his anger quiet but deep. "He gifted me my old office computer as a reward for my service. He didn't know I had a personal backup protocol. Every quarter for 20 years, I made an encrypted, off-site backup of the entire financial server, just in case." He opened his briefcase and pulled out a small, heavy-looking hard drive. "He thought he'd wipe the 2015-2020 records," Arthur said. "He didn't. I have every invoice, every wire transfer, every single deleted email. I have the proof he's been embezzling from this company since the day he was made COO. I have everything." I looked at Matilda. She was smiling, a cold, sharp, terrifying smile. "They're calling an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning," she said, "to have me declared incompetent and removed." "They think we're reeling from the press," Delia Walsh said, walking in. "They think they've got us on the ropes." "Tomorrow," Matilda said, "we show them just how wrong they are. Theodore, get Arthur's data loaded. Delia, get your injunctions ready. Jade, pick out your best suit. You're going to address the board." The boardroom at Holloway Bioscience was on the top floor, a long mahogany table reflecting the cloudy Phoenix sky. Every seat was filled. The board members, 12 men and women who looked like they were carved from granite, murmured quietly, all of them holding copies of the Business Journal. I sat next to Matilda. Delia Walsh sat behind us. Theodore was at a small table with his laptops, ready. At precisely 9:00 a.m., the doors swung open. Marcus strode in, his face a perfect mask of somber concern. Eleanor was on his arm, dressed in black as if attending a funeral. Victoria and Reese followed, their expressions equally mournful. It was a disgusting, perfect performance. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," Marcus began, his voice pitched with authority and regret. "As you know, we are facing a difficult situation. One that, as a family, we have tried to handle privately." He gestured to a man I hadn't noticed, a stranger in an expensive suit carrying a leather portfolio. "Before we begin, I've asked Dr. James Preston to join us," Marcus announced. Dr. Preston is a leading neurologist specializing in cognitive decline in older adults. He's here at my request, as a concerned son. My stomach nodded. This was his big play. "Dr. Preston," Marcus said, "would you be so kind?" Dr. Preston cleared his throat and opened his portfolio. "Thank you, Mr. Britton. While I have not had the opportunity to perform a full examination, Mrs. Holloway has been resistant. I have reviewed several hours of video footage provided by the family as well as their detailed observations, and what I've seen is concerning." He began to list clinical terms, indicators of short-term memory lapse, positional confusion, emotional volatility, all consistent with the early stages of cognitive impairment. "Thank you, Doctor," Marcus said, his voice heavy with fake emotion. "Board members," Reese said, stepping forward, his voice shaking. He wouldn't look at me. I've compiled some of the video evidence. I know this is hard to see, but you need to understand what we're dealing with." The lights dimmed. A large screen descended. A series of carefully, brutally edited clips began to play. Matilda at a company gala, looking confused as 3 people talked to her at once. Matilda at a press event, pausing for a second to find a name. Matilda in her own home at the disastrous dinner, looking erratic as Victoria taunted me. It was all normal moments stripped of context, stitched together to create the illusion of a woman in steep decline. When the lights came up, several board members looked visibly disturbed. "As you can see," Marcus said, "this is a crisis. My mother needs help, not the responsibility of a billion-dollar company. Therefore, for the protection of this company and for my mother's legacy, I move that we hold an immediate vote of no confidence. We must act now before lasting damage is done." A board member, one of Marcus's allies, seconded the motion. The chairman looked troubled. "This is quite sudden, Marcus." "With respect," Marcus cut him off, "the evidence is clear. We can vote today or we can wait until a public mistake forces our hand. I know which I prefer." The room was heavy with tension. The momentum was shifting. They were going to do it. I caught Matilda's eye. She gave me the slightest, almost imperceptible nod. I stood up. "Mr. Chairman," I said, my voice ringing out in the silence, "before this vote takes place, I have a presentation of my own." Marcus's face tightened. "This is a board matter, Jade. You have no standing here." "Actually, she does," Matilda said, her voice clear and steady. "As my invited guest, and as a primary stakeholder in the fraud that you, my son, are about to be exposed for." The chairman looked at Matilda, then at me. "We will hear from Miss Britton." "Thank you," I said, walking to the front of the room. I plugged Reese's USB drive into my laptop, but I didn't open that file. Not yet. I opened my own presentation. The first slide was a high-resolution photograph of my parents, Daniel and Serena Calloway. "For those of you who don't know me," I began, "my name is Jade Britton. I was born Jade Calloway. My parents, Daniel and Serena, were lead engineers at this company. 22 years ago, they died in a car crash." I clicked to the next slide. A picture of the original notarized trust document. They left behind a trust fund of $680,000 for my care and education. Matilda Holloway, their friend, arranged for her son, Marcus Britton, to adopt me. She transferred that money to him to ensure my future. "This is irrelevant," Marcus snapped. "On the contrary," I said, raising my voice, "it's the motive for everything that's happening today." I clicked again. A bank statement. Within 1 year, every cent of that trust was gone, transferred into an account called Britton Family Holdings. From there, I clicked, it was used to buy this Aspen vacation home. Click. And this private school tuition for Victoria. Click. And this beachfront property. Murmurs erupted around the room. They stole from an orphan. Their orphan. And when I found out, I said, my voice dropping, they did this. I clicked again. A photo of my ransacked apartment. And the next, a photo of the fire trucks outside my storage unit, smoke pouring into the night sky. They broke into my home and then burned the storage unit containing all of my parents' possessions to destroy the original documents. They committed arson to cover up a 22-year-old fraud. The room was in stunned silence. "That," I said, "is the man asking you to give him control of this company. But that's just what he did to me. Now let's see what he's done to you." Theodore Ramsey stood. "Mr. Chairman, board members, I am a forensic accountant hired by Mrs. Holloway. For the past 2 weeks, I have conducted a full audit of the COO's office." For the next 10 minutes, he laid it bare. The shell company, Vic's Marketing, used to funnel $750,000 to Victoria's boutique. The kickbacks from Apex Medical, the vendor owned by Marcus's roommate. The pattern of systematic, arrogant self-dealing. These are outrageous accusations," Marcus sputtered, his face flushing dark red. "And now, for Dr. Preston's diagnosis," Delia Walsh said, standing up. She was holding a stack of documents. While Dr. Preston was reviewing videos, I had Mrs. Holloway examined by 3 of the top independent neurologists in the country. Their full evaluations are here. She passed them out. All 3 confirm her cognitive function is not just perfect, but well above average for her age. No signs of impairment whatsoever. She held up one last piece of paper. "This," she said, "is a bank record. A transfer for $50,000 made 3 days ago from Marcus Britton to Dr. James Preston." Dr. Preston went white. He grabbed his portfolio. I should go." "Sit down, doctor," the chairman ordered, his voice like thunder. "There's one last thing," I said. "Mr. Britton claims the financial servers from 2015 to 2020 were wiped in a routine upgrade." He lied. The door at the back of the room opened. Arthur Trent walked in, holding his hard drive. "This is Arthur Trent," I said, "head of accounting for 20 years. He has the real backups, the ones Mr. Britton tried to destroy. The ones that prove conclusively a pattern of criminal embezzlement." The boardroom was in chaos. Marcus was on his feet, shouting, "Lies! Fabrications! She's a manipulative, jealous liar." "You're right about one thing, Marcus," I said. "The videos, they are manipulated." "Reese?" I looked at my brother. He was sweating, his face sheet white. "Reese was kind enough," I said, "to provide the unedited footage." I clicked on the file from the USB drive. The room went silent. The screen lit up. It was Marcus, Victoria, and Reese in the family living room. "Okay," Marcus was saying. "Victoria, you're going to ask her about the design firm. Reese, you film. When she gets flustered, I'll interrupt her and change the subject. We need to make her look confused. Let's practice." The room watched, horrified, as my family rehearsed, blocked, and filmed the very dementia clips they had just presented as evidence. The video ended. The silence in the room was absolute. It was deafening. Marcus collapsed back into his chair, his face ashen. He was breathing hard, staring at the blank screen. Eleanor's hand was at her throat, her pearls clicking. Reese looked like he was going to be sick. Then Victoria, seeing it all slip away, seeing her boutique and her inheritance and her entire life of privilege crumble, lost control. She leaped to her feet, her chair crashing to the floor. She pointed a shaking finger at me, her face a mask of pure, distorted hatred. "You!" she shrieked, her voice echoing in the stunned room. "You did this! You've been planning this! You were always jealous! You're not even family! You're just a stray we took in, and this is how you repay us!" Her outburst hung in the air, more damning than any piece of evidence we had presented. The careful, concerned family narrative had just been ripped to shreds. The board members stared at her, not with sympathy, but with pure, unadulterated disgust. Victoria seemed to realize what she'd done. Her hand flew to her mouth, but it was too late. The mask was off. The chairman, William Blackwell, slowly put on his glasses. He looked at Victoria, then at Marcus, then at me. "I believe," he said, his voice a low growl, "we've heard sufficient testimony. This board will adjourn to deliberate." They filed out of the room. Marcus, Eleanor, Victoria, and Reese were left sitting at the table, a toxic island of silence. I stood with Matilda, Delia, and Theodore, not looking at them. They were back in less than 10 minutes. The speed was its own verdict. Chairman Blackwell stood at the head of the table. His expression was grim. "This board votes unanimously," he announced, "to remove Martin Britton as Chief Operating Officer of Holloway Bioscience, effective immediately." Marcus made a choking sound. "Furthermore," Blackwell continued, "Marcus Britton, Eleanor Britton, Victoria Britton, and Reese Britton are found to be acting in conspiracy against the interests of this company and its founder. You are all, as of this moment, permanently banned from company premises." "You can't," Marcus whispered. "We can," Blackwell said. "The evidence speaks for itself, Mr. Britton. This company deserves better leadership." The company's chief counsel, Judge Monroe, who had sat silently through the entire proceeding, now stood. "Mr. Chairman," he said, his formal voice carrying immense weight, "based on the evidence presented today, evidence of felony arson, breaking and entering, systematic financial fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement of trust funds, I am ethically and legally bound to refer this entire matter to the district attorney's office for consideration of criminal charges." The transformation was absolute. Marcus's last bit of color drained from his face. Eleanor let out a small, terrified sob. Victoria's defiance crumbled into pure panic disbelief. The power that had allowed them to humiliate me at that dinner table, to saddle me with a $3,480 bill, to steal my past and try to steal Matilda's future, evaporated in that single instant. Matilda rose slowly, commanding the room's full attention. She stood straighter than I had ever seen her. "As founder and majority shareholder of Holloway Bioscience," she said, her voice clear and strong, "I have one final piece of business. I am, today, formally announcing my chosen successor." She turned and looked directly at me. For 22 years, I watched this young woman endure cruelty with dignity. In the last month, I have watched her demonstrate an intelligence, a resilience, and an integrity that this company has been sorely lacking. She has the mind of her parents, and she has a spine of steel. "My successor, pending your approval, is Jade Britton." She extended her hand to me. The board members, one by one, began to applaud. Not a polite corporate clap, but real, sustained applause. "Security will now escort the Britton family from the building," Chairman Blackwell announced. I watched as two uniformed guards approached my former family, Martin, Eleanor, Victoria, and Reese. They were herded out of the room, a silent, defeated procession. Their long 22-year reign of casual cruelty was over. 6 months later, I stood by Matilda's bedside, holding her hand. She had fought off Marcus's coup, but she couldn't fight off the illness that had been quietly advancing for the past year. "You did it, Jade," she whispered, her voice frail but her eyes still sharp. "You saved it. You saved them. Daniel and Serena. You saved their legacy." "We saved it," I corrected, squeezing her hand. "They would be so proud of you," she said. She smiled, a small, peaceful smile. "So am I." She slipped away in her sleep that night. The reading of her will was a formality. She left everything to me, the company, the fortune, the sprawling Britton mansion on the hill. My first act as CEO was not at the company. It was at that house. I stood in the grand, gaudy dining room where I had never been welcome. The crystal chandelier, the mahogany table, it all felt cold and empty. "Gut it," I told the contractors, "all of it." We began the work of transforming the house. Where Marcus had his stuffy, dark-paneled office, we built bright, airy therapy rooms. Where Victoria had her massive walk-in closet, we built a library. The sprawling Britton mansion, a monument to greed and ego, was being reborn. It was becoming the Calloway Foundation, a state-of-the-art residential and support center for abused and neglected children. The fall of the House of Britton was swift and brutal. A news anchor on TV reported it with somber professionalism. Disgraced former COO Marcus Britton was sentenced today to 8 years in federal prison for financial fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. His wife, Eleanor, received 2 years probation for her role in the conspiracy. I saw a picture of Eleanor a few weeks later, not in the press, but in a candid photo online. She was outside a drab apartment building. The Aspen and Phoenix homes had been seized and sold to pay back the company. The diamonds were gone. She was just an ordinary older woman, alone, carrying a bag of groceries. Victoria's fate was, in a way, more poetic. Her Vicks boutique collapsed. She tried to rebrand as a lifestyle influencer, but the viral clip of her boardroom shriek, "You're just a stray," was attached to every post she ever made. The internet, it turned out, never forgets. She was a digital ghost, perpetually haunted by her own cruelty. And Reese, I saw him once, months later. I was meeting a contractor at a gritty dive bar on the industrial side of town, and there he was. His once perfect hair was lank, his shoulders slumped. He was clearing tables, wiping up spilled beer. Our eyes met across the room. He froze. a dirty rag in his hand. I just held his gaze for a second. Then I turned back to my contractor as if I hadn't seen him at all. 1 year later, I stood at a podium on the wide green lawn of what was once the Britton estate. Behind me, the new Calloway Foundation gleamed in the sun, a modern, warm building filled with light. Hundreds of faces looked up at me, employees, community leaders, board members, and the first group of children who would call this place home. "I spent years," I said, my voice clear and strong through the microphone, "believing that family was something you were given. I spent years trying to earn my place in a family that never wanted me." My eyes found the new portrait of Matilda that hung in the entryway. "Matilda Holloway taught me the truth," I said. "Family isn't about blood. It's about integrity. It's about protection. It's about showing up. It's a family you build." The applause was loud. When the ceremony concluded, I walked alone to the edge of the lake on the property. The state's attorneys had finally, after a long legal battle, recovered the full $680,000 from my stolen trust, plus interest. I held the cashier's check in my hand. It was for over $2 million. For a moment, I thought of all the things I could do with it. Buy a new car, a new house, a new life. Then I tore it into pieces. I tore it over and over until it was just confetti in my palm. I opened my hand and let the wind take the pieces, scattering them across the water. My worth was never about the money. It was about justice. The foundation, the company, the legacy of my real parents, Daniel and Serena, that was the inheritance. The ripples on the water faded. Behind me, I could hear the sound of children laughing. Justice was served. A new legacy had begun. If this story resonated with you, leave a like and consider subscribing. You can also drop any comment below, even just one word. Maybe tell me where you're watching from, or what time it is right now. Sometimes one word is enough to say you were here,